What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam. I am your host. So, on today's episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit about a card that I just sold. So, some of you may have been listening to the podcast a few months ago, maybe 2-3 months ago. I'm not sure when I originally talked about this card, but I sold one of my silver Mbappe Prism cards. So, long term, I think that card is probably going to be in the 10 to 12K range, I would say. And I still have one of them. So the one I'm going to be holding for quite some time, probably hopefully until it gets to that range, because of the soccer in general, the sport, how large the sport is going to get, and then also the amount of those cards. There aren't many of them. Like, I think there's only 20 or 30 PSA 10s of the silver. So, like I said, it's unfortunate that I did have to sell one now. Obviously, it is for a good reason. So I'm selling it because I'm getting married in September, and that's going towards the wedding. So that's a good thing. And I mean, I bought the card. So I bought two of them. I bought one for 75 and one for 100. And I mean, so I'm selling I'm selling a card that I'll just say 100. I'll just say I bought this one for 100. I bought a card for $100 and I sold it for $2,500. That's what I sold it for. So I think a couple points that I want to get out about that in general. So so I don't do much selling. So I do a lot of buying. I haven't done much selling. I plan on doing a little bit more selling over the next few months, just until the wedding gets here, so I can get some more money for the wedding. So I guess one thing that I do want to talk about is opportunity. So the opportunity to sell this card now compared to my wedding's in September, so I would need to have sold it before September. So I got a few offers on this card, some around 1,800, some around 1,900, and I didn't want to sell it for that. I had it up for, like, a bunch of them sold in the 4K range. So realistically, a few months ago, a few of them sold for 4K. So I was hoping that I was going to get 4K for the card. I think realistically, a few of them sold for 4K. I think one of them actually didn't even sell, whatever. So I put it up for 3,500. I had offers. I wasn't accepting certain ones. So, like I said, I got a couple offers. I got a couple for 1,800. I got a couple for 1,900. And then the other day, I got one for 2,500. And I sat on it for a few hours just because in my head I was like, well, let me just think about it, because, like, do you think in a month from now or 2 months from now this is going to be a more expensive card? In my head I was like, I'd rather have the money. Like, because what ends up happening with a card like this, and what happens with cards in this higher end range, is that the opportunity to sell it doesn't come around super often. I think one thing that you have to look at when you're selling cards is the volume of how often a card sells. And, like, if you're buying a Luka or a Zion, if you bought it for however much, I don't off the top of my head, I know Luka's around 800. I think Zion's around probably 650-ish, 600, 500. I'm not 100% sure. But if you bought it, you could, in theory, sell it probably right away. And if this is one thing I was looking into when Luka's were still, like, the beginning of the basketball season. I remember I was looking and thinking about flipping Luka's, and I was thinking that because they were ranging I think they were still in the $80 range. So they were ranging from about $80 to $110. So I was thinking to myself, if I bought it for $80 and I sell it for $110, with, fees and stuff, that's probably going to be about, it's not going to be a huge profit, but, like, if you were to do this in volumes, if you were to do this 10, 12, 20 times, that's where the profit does start to add up. And profit is profit if you're selling sports cards. Like, realistically, those cards are selling a lot. So, like I said, if you wanted to try and flip, which, granted, I don't think if you're buying and selling on eBay, you're probably more likely to buy and hold and then sell rather than buy and sell right away, just because of fees with PayPal and all that stuff. If you're buying in person, like if you're going to a shop, or if you're going to a show and they have them for 80 and you can buy them for 80 flat and you don't have to pay PayPal and all that stuff, and then you can sell it either, I don't know, I mean, if you can sell them at the store, at the shop, and get the money in hand, like, that's obviously good. But if you could buy the cards for, because sometimes what you'll find too is that people are more willing to, first of all, if you have cash, that's one thing. Second of all, if you're willing to buy off of eBay, sometimes you can find better deals because people don't have to pay like the seller fee, which is like roughly, I think it's between 13 and 15% between eBay and PayPal. So you're not paying that extra fee. So if you're getting stuff off of eBay, you may get a better deal than someone selling it on eBay because they're willing to take less because they're not taking as much out of the total profit there. But so the opportunity, like with this Mbappe card, like if I didn't sell this card now, and this like you got to look at how many buyers there are of a certain card. I think that's one thing to look at if you're a new buyer and seller of sports cards, and it's not exactly something that like I said, if you're buying Lukas or you're buying Zions, you don't really have to worry about that. But like if you're buying or selling, like for me, this was a sell. So if you're selling a $2,500 card, you have to think about how many people are buying the card. Like, because if I have this card and I don't sell it to this person and they go out and they buy a different one, that means it's one less buyer, hypothetically. And it depends on how many this person wants as well. Like if this person wants multiple, and in a month from now this person's willing to still pay, that person's obviously still there. But if, for example, if I don't sell it to this person and they don't want to buy any more Mbappe Silver PSA 10s, then that's one less person that I have the opportunity to sell to. So I looked at it that way, where I said, how many other people right now are looking at this card based off of the market? Like I said, in 4 to 5 years, like if Mbappe goes somewhere this summer, or after the season, because I guess it's not gonna be the summer anymore because there's still Champions League stuff. But after this whole season, if he gets sold or he goes somewhere else, if he goes to Real Madrid or he goes to Liverpool and he just dominates and becomes like a Ronaldo or a Messi, like, I think that silver could be the same price as like a Giannis silver, because of the supply is way less also. And also the amount of people who may, and this is another opportunity, the opportunity for people who are interested in soccer to, the opportunity for people who are interested in soccer to maybe potentially want to get into sports cards, I think is higher than any sport in the whole entire world. That's why, like, for some Jordan stuff, like I bought like some lower end Jordan stuff, and I tried to sell it and it hasn't really sold. But like that's why you have to look at, like, for that opportunity, I should have realistically been looking to sell before the documentary ended, because the number of people buying Jordan stuff just immediately dropped off as soon as that documentary ended. So you got to look at the opportunity of when to sell these cards and when the opportunity is the highest. Like I said, I still believe, like, I still believe in soccer, first of all, and also I guess it's another point maybe. Just because I'm selling one card doesn't mean the whole market I don't believe in. Like, I believe in soccer maybe more than I believe in basketball as a market going forward, as maybe one of the most popular cards and most popular markets, and it could be maybe not the fastest growing, but it will for sure. I think it will for sure one day be the biggest market within sports cards, kind of depending on how international shipping goes, because that's I think one pretty big barrier to entry to some international buyers is international shipping. So I mean, within the United States, that's going to be big. So and especially with a player like Mbappe, where I think he's one of the best players in the world right now, and he's only 21 or 22 years old. I forget off the top of my head how old he is, but like that opportunity, you're basically you're buying into potentially the Ronaldo or Messi of this generation. Like, this is like you're buying basically, you're potentially buying Michael Jordan cards in 1987. Like, that's where I think these Mbappe cards are right now. So that's why, I am, it's selling a card that was one of the cards that I think, like, because I went back and I looked, and the first time that I think I talked about Mbappe or soccer cards was back in September. I was probably talking about buying Mbappe because that's who all the players I was buying, and Neymar as well as the other players. But I talked about, like, culture within sports cards, and also, like, Instagram, where I think Instagram followers matter and followers in general, and that's back in September. So, like, I looked at Mbappe cards back in September, and that's when I was buying, like, August, September area. So, the unfortunate part is that now I don't own the card anymore. I'm going to be shipping it out tomorrow, I believe. And I don't know. I mean, I think the Mbappe purchases that I made, because I still have a bunch of raw cards that I need to send into PSA, and then I have a bunch of graded PSA 10s that right now are sitting in the $500-$600 range. So, like, those are still good, and I still have one of these silver. So, I've been trying to figure out exactly what the summer of 2019 is going to be referred to in the sports card history, because I'm convinced it's going to be one of the best times for sports cards for buying that there may ever be. I also, because one interesting thing was in September 2019, you could have been buying Luka's for $65 September 1st, and you could have been buying Ronald Acuna's for $120. So, like, that time period is just absolutely insane. Like, if you look at the summer of 2019, realistically, I think that summer is going to be looked at as like what the gold rush back in the 1800s. I don't know when, I forget when the gold rush happened. I think it was like 1850 or something like that. It's going to be looked at like the gold rush, because that was when sports cards, in my opinion, at that time they were growing pretty significantly, but it still wasn't like culturally super relevant yet, if that makes sense. And I mean, anybody who's been in this game since then knows, even since the beginning of this year, like, you could have doubled your money in sports cards if you had been buying in January and selling now. Especially, I think there's going to be an interesting opportunity where all sports are going to be going at the same time. Like, the NFL is looking a little sketchy, but, basketball, baseball, hockey, and football have the potential to all be playing at the same time, which is definitely something that has actually, I don't know if it's never happened, or if, like, the total, like, all the sports playing all four at the same time, I don't think usually happens most of the time during the year. It may be maybe in September. No, because basketball isn't playing and neither is the NHL. So it's going to be one of the only times where you're going to be able to potentially watch 4 different sports on one day. And with soccer, I mean 5. But you're going to be able to watch 4 of the major sports all in one day. So I think we are going to have an interesting opportunity for sports cards coming up. And if you are selling, if you're buying, first of all, if you're selling, just sell them and kind of move on. I also have kind of been thinking of just selling all of my cards and then restarting investing, because I think I have made a decent amount of money on a lot of cards that I bought. And I think if I were to try and restart, it would be kind of interesting to see where I would be going and what I'd be spending money on, because I also think I do want to try and add some more long-term plays. Like, basically, for the most part, like I've said this in the past, for the most part, soccer is going to be one of the sports I'm spending money on that I'm not planning on selling for quite some time. Like, I know I understand that the whole point of this podcast is me talking about selling one of my Mbappes, but I just think for the most part, like, a majority of the soccer stuff, I've only really sold one Mbappe, and then I sold another Mbappe, and that's pretty much all I've sold from soccer. So the point that I'm trying to make of this podcast is that if you're selling stuff, well, there isn't really one point, it's a bunch of points, but if you're selling stuff, one point that you could take away from the ending of the show is if you're selling stuff, just sell it and move on, because there's always going to be another opportunity to make money. I think if you were buying during last summer and selling now, that was one of the best opportunities, but I think there's still going to be tons of opportunities going forward to buy and sell. At least I think there will be as sports cards continue to grow. And that's all I've got for today's episode. So I want to thank you all for listening. Go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Go follow our sponsor, StarStock, at StarStock Market on Instagram, Twitter. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.